Hey, welcome to day 8. My name is John. It's great to hang out with you guys. We are on our 40-day journey through the Lent season. And I just want to encourage you to continue to share this with friends, coworkers, whoever. Get the word out. This is a way to engage in the Lent season and not in the Lent season. You may watch this in the summer or fall. Some of you are trying to get momentum in Bible reading, and this resource certainly will help you do that. And so I'm proud of you guys for hopping in on day 8. Maybe you are current, you've watched all these, or maybe today is your day 1. Well, welcome to day 8. Today we're going to be reading a passage that at first pass is really, really tough. It's hard to understand because it's 2023. I don't know when you're going to be watching this, but it's hard to understand as Americans. And so I'm going to get there in a second. But I want to encourage you to really, really engage in what I'm about to read to you today. Our reading today is following along with the Mission Church reading plan, and it comes from Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, we're going to look at verse 1 today. Let me read this to you. It starts with therefore. Therefore, whenever there's a therefore in the Bible, it's there for a reason. And it's there for a reason because God is using this, and through Paul in this moment, to grab the attention of the original audience. And so whenever you come across a therefore when you're reading the Bible, get ready. Because whatever is about to be said next is really, really important. Romans 12:1 to me is like a peak that stands above the rest. I think in mountains, because I love mountains, this is like a 14er, Romans 12:1. It stands out. It is powerful. It's offensive. Truth can be that way, but it can lead to life if you allow it. And so God says to his people, therefore, all right, he says, therefore, I urge you, brothers, and I can add in sisters. This was to the people of God. He's saying, listen, to the persecuted church in Rome, I urge you. This is intense language. He's saying, hey, I urge you. I'm trying to interrupt your day. I urge you, brothers, all right, in view of God's mercy, check this out, to willingly offer your bodies. Now, I'm not sure what you think of when you think about your body. Most that are watching this, that brings up a lot of shame and a lot of other things. But God is saying, hey, your body that I gave you, listen, he says, I'm urging you, right, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices. The idea that somehow in Christianity we can disconnect our body from that which God has control over, ownership over, is not found in Scripture. The idea that somehow we can disconnect our bodies and what we do with our bodies and just say, it's just our bodies, is anti-Bible. It's anti what God would say, because you know this, like your body is actually connected to everything else. Your body and your soul and your spirit, you can't just separate it and say, well, it doesn't count, it's just my body. God is saying, no, your body is a big deal. He's saying, in view of my mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. He continues, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. This act of worship, it's proper, it's true. This is your spiritual act of worship. Now, when you think of worship, you think of a lot of different things. We think of songs, we think of raising our hands in worship, and certainly that's part of it. But God is going after this all of life worship. What we do with our body is how we worship God. And he's saying, what you're doing with your body, is it holy and pleasing? If so, it is a living sacrifice. And so let's talk about this idea of a living sacrifice. Living sacrifice. Now, you probably have never seen, at least I've never seen, an animal sacrifice before. I love animals. In fact, I've got my dog Jack. I talk about him all the time. In our context here, I just go into the store and they hand me chicken. And so I've never seen, right, this animal sacrifice, especially when it comes to religion and our faith. I've never seen that. And so this is a contextual leap for us as American Christians. We're like, sacrifice, altar, blood, fire, animal, ashes? How do we relate to this? Well, in the early days, way back, when Paul was writing this to that original context, they actually understood it perfectly. This was actually a big part of their culture. It wasn't a contextual leap for them, actually. When they heard this living sacrifice phrase, they thought back to animal sacrifice, specifically in the temple, as making atonement for their sins. And so we got to travel back to that context to really understand it. And this phrase, living sacrifice, as you think of it and spend time thinking on it, it's a paradox. Living sacrifice. Another way of saying it is living killing. Like, wait, that doesn't go together. It's a paradox. It's like Chicago Bears and winning, right? Chicago and good weather. It's a paradox. Let's talk about living sacrifice. The question that I have for us today, as you walk through and work through the discipleship triangle, is this: is your life a living sacrifice? If so, it will actually be a paradox to a watching world. More on that later. Is your life a living sacrifice? If you spend some time studying animal sacrifices in the Old Testament, you can look some of this up. You're going to learn some things about it that you and I can apply to our life today. A couple thoughts on this. When it comes to asking that question, is your life a living sacrifice? Well, when you understand animal sacrifice, that animal would be placed on the altar. And once it was placed on the altar, that animal ceased to live for itself. What does it look like for you and I, for our one and only life, to be a living sacrifice? Well, it's to get to that place where we cease to live for ourselves. That's someone whose body, whose life, is a living sacrifice. It's not thinking, starting its day, ending its day, continuing its day, thinking about itself. What do I want to do? What's in it for me? No. It is someone who's placed their life on the altar, ceasing to live for itself. Paul says this in Galatians 2, verse 20, I've been crucified with Christ and no longer live. The life that I now live, I live in the body, and I live this by faith. That was one of the first verses that I memorized at the end of college when I surrendered my life to Christ, because I lived for myself. My body was for John, and I did whatever I wanted to do. And so this is a powerful truth that when you and I live lives that are living sacrifices, our bodies, well, it ceased to live for ourselves. We're not just thinking about what's going to make me happy. No, we're saying, is this holy? Is what I'm doing with my body pleasing to God? It matters. This is what we can understand. It ceased to live for itself. The second thing we can understand as we travel back contextually about this living sacrifice idea that God has called us to is that it was consumed. Think about this animal that was placed on the altar, whether it was a ram, we learned about that yesterday. Sometimes it would be a goat. The Passover, it would be a spotless lamb for sure, foreshadowing the ultimate and final sacrifice of Christ. And so think about when they would place this animal on the altar. When you study this, you will find that that animal ceased to live for itself. But secondly, it was completely consumed. Only ashes remained. What a powerful mental picture for you and I today. As parts of your life, aspects of what you're doing with your body, continually crawling off the altar? Or are you staying on the altar and you are experiencing what Hebrews says is how our God is a consuming fire? Your life is meant to be placed on the altar. And when it's placed on the altar, it is consumed by God. And man, this is a challenging teaching today. But I can promise you this, when your life is consumed by God, that's actually when life begins. Can you imagine starting your day without regret for what you did with your body last night? Can you imagine if you were to agree with the words of Jesus that said, hey, if you want to find life, lose your life. Jesus said, if you want to follow me, well, take up your cross first. He's getting at this understanding that you are called to be a living sacrifice. This is when your life ceases to exist for itself, and this is when your life is consumed by God where only ashes remain. Now, let's finish with this. I want you to think about your life as a living sacrifice. When you actually live out what we're talking about today during this Lenten season and far beyond it, your life will become a paradox. People will experience you as a business leader saying, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. A business owner that has more than one bottom line for his company? It's a paradox. When they encounter you at high school student that is sexually pure, wait, what? This is a paradox. When they experience you as a parent that isn't totally consumed with your kids and schedules and busyness and all this, like, wait, that kind of peace, that's a paradox. For me, this inspires me a great deal. That when people encounter my life, that it would be a paradox experience for them. And in that moment, I have an opportunity to tell them about the greatest paradox of all time. A king who washed the feet of others. A king who willingly laid down his life so that you and I could have life everlasting. May our life be a paradoxical life that reflects a paradoxical king who gave everything for you and I. That's all we have today for day 8. See you guys tomorrow for day 9.